Welcome to the NBA Fast Break Podcast with your host, shooting guard from Sacramento, California, 6'1", Andy Fletcher. So today we're going to be talking about the recent news in the NBA. Giannis trade, LaMelo trade, Julius Randle trade, Miles Bridges trade. Let's get right to it. First, I'd like to start with the 2026 NBA draft, winners and losers, in my opinion. I think when it comes to the winners, I think the Hawks, Kings, Clippers, Spurs, and Nets all did really well in the draft. Why? Well, let's start off with the Kings. Kings had the most NBA-ready and best offensive point guard in the draft, Darius Acuff, slide to them at number 7. And me, being a Kings fan, boy, did they need that one. Had to have it. Because finishing the season with 22 wins and then risking a chance on a lower ceiling point guard, that's just not going to get it done. They had to have the next Dame Lillard fall to them, and I believe they did. As far as Alex Caravan goes, they traded a 2032 second rounder and their 34th pick in this year's draft. So 2 seconds to move up to 29. And look, Alex Caravan, he's an older prospect. I don't love older prospects, especially in the first round. But he was the 29th pick. And not only that, he's a culture guy. He won 2 national championships titles with the UConn Huskies. Just a connector piece, excellent shooter, excellent leader, just good for the culture. And we don't really have that many guys like that in SAC right now. So I think it was a solid pick, pretty creative. As far as Emmanuel Sharp goes, 3-and-D player from Houston, the backcourt mate with Kingston Flemings. Just turned 22 a couple months ago, so slightly older prospect, but has that fierce mentality, plays hard, can really shoot the three on us. Hit 37% from three with 7 attempts per game. That's pretty darn good. So I look forward to how they do in Summer League. Nets, along with acquiring Julius Randle from the Timberwolves, acquired the 28th pick in the draft from the Timberwolves, basically to eat his salary. So they got rewarded that, but they had to lose their pick 33 back to the Timberwolves, who chose Evans, the shooting guard from Duke. Real good movement shooter. But I don't think the Timberwolves did anything great. They only had that second-round pick, so I'd want to talk more about the Nets, who drafted the pick before the Kings and selected Michael Brown as well as Joshua Jefferson. They had a pretty good draft. Michael Brown is very dynamic. Kind of reminds me of a young Jamal Crawford, maybe with a little more defense. Just super dynamic with the ball in his hands, like I mentioned. Has deep range. But I got to admit, if I had to choose between Michael Brown, Keaton Wagler, who went to the Clippers, and Darius Acuff, I would have chose Acuff. I'm Mr. High Upside. I'm going for the gusto. The Hawks, excellent draft in my opinion. They got one of the most tough enforcer-type guys in the draft in Zuby Ejiofor, who I loved watching his highlights from St. John's. Just he's a beast, especially on the defensive end, averaging 2.1 blocks per game. I think can be sort of a beef stew for that team, which they desperately need because they don't have that much depth besides Mo Gay and a Conwu, and then they drafted Kingston Flemings at pick 8, two-way point guard. Not as high of upside as Michael Brown or Acuff, in my opinion, but had a really good interview. You could tell just a good kid and plays really hard. So, and they had Henry Visar from North Carolina follow them at pick 52. So that was pretty darn good value. The Spurs, you might as well just call them the defensive draft because they got 3 elite defensive prospects along with a point guard who's a little undersized but can really score, and even him averaged about 2 steals a game. But boy, did they get a defensive haul in this year's draft. Drafting Jaden Quaidance, trading for the 26th pick in the draft, which was, I'm trying to remember his name, from UConn, the big man, Terrace Reed. And then they got Malik Brown from Duke, who was ACC Defensive Player of the Year. So you want to talk about a defensive haul. Obviously, I give them credit. I'm not a Spurs fan, but they noticed their weaknesses behind, other than Wembanyama. When he's out, they really needed to improve their rim protection, and boy, did they solve that with some high upside and some also high floor with Terrace Reed, Malik Brown, and Jaden Quaidance. And the other team I thought did really well in the draft was the Charlotte Hornets. Now, the Charlotte Hornets, they went and got Heinz Stomback from Washington at pick 14, who was one of the best rebounders in college basketball. And he just turned 20 years old. I mean, this guy, I could see him being kind of a Sabonis type. Maybe you could run him as a hub. He's going to attack the boards. High character guy. That I felt pretty good that they solved their needs of finding a big, because obviously as good of a workhorse as Diabate is and a rim protector, I still think they might be searching for that starting center. So I feel like Steinbach was a pretty good pick there. Christian Anderson was my favorite post-lottery point guard selection. I love point guards that can shoot the ball. I will never, and you can take this from me, I scout players. By the way, it's my dream to work in a front office one day. I eat, sleep, breathe NBA basketball. I'm always thinking about it. It's family, basketball, and work in that order. And boy, if I could ever get in the advisory role even, that would be fantastic. But I've been doing a lot of scouting for the past 15 years or so. And Christian Anderson, for not being a lottery pick, he could go down as the best shooter in this draft, at least top 3, along with Darren Peterson and Darius Acuff. He's an excellent shooting point guard. He also averaged about 7 assists per game. 6'1", so slightly undersized, but he has a 6'6" wingspan. So nice plus size wingspan there, but like I said, elite shooter, gets his teammates involved. I love that pick. That was my favorite pick in the first round other than Darius Acuff was Christian Anderson at pick 18. I thought that was an excellent pick, and he can replace the Kobe White role last year because Kobe White is taking the place of LaMelo Ball in the starting lineup, it looks like. So now I'd like to talk about the losers of the draft. I really thought Golden State, for them having the 11th pick in the draft, I understand they're trying to maximize Steph's window. For there to be an elite center in this draft still available at pick 11, who averaged 2.6 blocks per game at 7'3", you know that there's a lot of big men in the game that are dominating right now. Okay, like Giannis, like Jokic, like Wemby. You got to defend those guys, or at least try to slow them down. In my opinion, you had that in Ade Mara, and you went and decided to get, Yaxel Lendenborg at 11. I would have gone Ade Mara there for the rim protection. He's just turned 21. I'd say that's about a middle of the road age. That's about the average age these days. For about as many 19-year-olds there's equally as many 22, 23-year-old guys. But he just won. They both just were on the national championship team in Michigan. But in my opinion, he's the best defensive rim protector in this draft. Just takes up so much space, and I think that they could have solved a lot of issues drafting Mara, but they decided to go with the Axel, who's a little more of a versatile wing forward. So I didn't really love that pick, and Yaxel's about to be 24 years old, just like how the Kings took Nick Clifford last year, who was about to turn 24, and I've stated my comments on that. I did not think that was a good pick. Anyway, another loser in this draft, in my opinion, was the Denver Nuggets. Now, Denver Nuggets, they've been a good team for a long time now, over 5 years for sure, which, by the way, they should have never, ever fired Mike Malone. That was a disgrace. You're talking about a guy that won a championship just a year or two prior, and then they gave him the boot. And now he's the new coach at North Carolina. See, the thing is with Denver, they're pretty high up there with the contracts, and they needed to come in and bring in some young talent, and they traded that 26th pick, like I mentioned earlier, to the Spurs. I really think Jokic needed a reliable backup. They also needed a good backup for Jamal Murray, and they traded that, who ended up being Taurus Reed. I think that made them one of the losers of the draft. I wouldn't have traded that pick. They needed to get younger. They needed to get less expensive. Now I'd like to talk about the trades that have been going on in the NBA and maybe some rumors. So obviously the Giannis trade to the Miami Heat. You notice I'm not looking at any guides. I'm doing this all off of memory. So I'm sorry if I may be off just a smidge, but like I say, I follow the game, and I'm going to try to be as accurate as I can without looking at anything, because real knowledge is what you know, not reading other people's comments. So as you can see, it's just all in here. So the Giannis trade to Miami, I obviously 90% of the time, right, when you get the best player in the trade, especially in their prime, you win the deal. So we'll see what happens, but Milwaukee did get a haul. They got a young, high-upside center in Khalil Ware, which I like, my favorite piece in that whole trade. They got Jaime Jaquez. They got Tyler Hero, who I think should have some interest from Detroit, because Cade Cunningham needs a lot of help offensively. They also got Kasparas Yakachonis, last year's pick from Miami, the point guard, and they also got a couple of future firsts, which one of them was the 13th pick, being Nate Ament. I think their draft was just okay. Nate Ament's kind of a high risk kind of player. Obviously, Braden Burries was more of a high floor. See him as a really good role player, good shooter, good defender. But I think Miami won the trade, and especially how they were able to get one of the best shooters in the draft, and Ryan Conwell in the early second round. I think they're going to build out that team just fine, and they should be an Eastern Conference contender. So I would say that the Miami Heat won the trade. LaMelo Ball trade to the Minnesota Timberwolves. Again, I do think that they won the trade. I think it was I give the Timberwolves a lot of credit in that trade, because when you're the better team, this is just a strategic move, okay? When you're the better team than the opposing partner that you're trading with, it makes all the sense in the world to include pick swaps. Why? Because you know you're going to be the better team. So you're not really losing anything at that point. Either you're going to get your picks or you're going to get their picks, right? Who's a better team right now out of Charlotte and Minnesota? Minnesota is a little bit better. And now they're even more better than that because they just acquired LaMelo Ball, who will be the second star on this Minnesota team. So I'm not saying that they got, scowled, the Hornets. I don't think it was a bad trade for them. They got Naz Reid. They got 3 pick swaps. They got a 2033 first. They got some good talent. But I still think LaMelo, 24-year-old point guard, really good shooter, good assist man. That's going to be quite the dynamic backcourt going forward. I mean, you can make the case they haven't even hit their primes yet. So good trade for Minnesota there. As far as the Julius Randle trade, who was traded a 3-team deal, Nick Claxton going to Chicago, Julius Randle and the 28th pick going to the Nets, and the 33rd pick going to the Timberwolves. Already commented on that as far as draft goes. Basically, the Bulls had the open salary. They basically were just able to take Nick Claxton, solid free agent center, about 28 years old, defensive-minded, doesn't really give much offense, but good rim protector. It's a win for them. They didn't have to give up anything, just absorb his salary. I would say that the Minnesota Timberwolves probably won that trade because they're still able to get a solid player in the second round, and yet they were able to get off of Julius Randle's contract. So now I'd like to talk about the Miles Bridges trade. This one I'm really going to get passionate about. So coming from a family of values, I have a 0 tolerance for domestic violence, especially to children and to women. This guy should be in jail. When I mean this guy, I'm talking about Miles Bridges. I'm not even saying, if he's not in jail, that's one thing, but in my opinion, he should be. But you sure as hell should be out of the NBA. He should have never got that last contract he got out of Charlotte. Good for them, at least moving him now. Better late than never. But obviously, if he was on my team and that occurred, he wouldn't have been re-signed. It's a values-based league. You have talent, but you also have to abide by the rules. And if you break laws and you hurt women and children, you're out of the league. That's it. So that being said, pretty self-explanatory. There were a couple picks exchanged back and forth. Grayson Allen and Royce O'Neal went to Charlotte, along with a first and a second, and a first-round pick, along with Miles Bridges, went to Phoenix. Again, a good trade for Charlotte. Not much to say there. That's what I would have done. I would have unloaded it. I would have unloaded Bridges a long time ago. Now, a couple rumors I'd like to get into. Obviously, Jaylen Brown has been all over the place. Keep hearing him. He could be going to Portland, could be going to New Orleans. I don't know why he would want to do that, but obviously, if he doesn't have a no-trade clause, right? It's hey, wherever we trade you, that's what's going to happen. We're going to do what's best for Boston. Me personally, I think he should be traded to Portland. I think Portland has an excellent young core and package. You talk about a team that has Shaedon Sharpe, Donovan Clingan, Toumani Camara, Scoot Henderson. You got a lot of young talent there. And if you can get a combination of 2 of those guys, plus at least 3 first-rounders, I'm pulling the trigger. I understand Jaylen Brown's a 29-year-old superstar, two-way player. But you know what? Shaedon Sharpe, to me, as I'm just naming one of the 4 guys I just mentioned, Shaedon Sharpe is a high-upside wing with freak athleticism. I mean, this guy's an Anthony Edwards light. Watch videos on him, and the guy's supremely talented. So I'd much rather get younger if I'm Boston, who's starting to get a little a little old in the tooth there, and see if you can acquire a combination of two of those guys that I mentioned, along with some picks, which I'm pretty sure with what I was reading on the internet, obviously the insiders, they have the intellect, but I'm pretty sure if that was offered, if I was Boston, I would take that and kind of do a minor reset. Now, Kawhi Leonard, I think the Clippers should look to trade Kawhi. His value's up as high right now as it's ever going to be. He's 34 years old. He's about to turn 35. He was an All-NBA member last year, had a hell of a year, averaged about 27 points a game, one of the best years of his whole career, played over 65 games, hence why he was allowed to get an All-NBA vote or award, because you have to play at least 65 games to be allowable for the postseason awards. So anyway, if they could get a trade, say to Detroit, I know Kawhi said apparently that he didn't want to go to Detroit, but wherever you can go to get the best package you can of young assets. I'll tell you this about the Clippers. They won the 2026 deadline. I'll tell you that right now. For you to trade James Harden and Ivica Zubac and come out of it with 23-year-old Ben Mathurin, Darius Garland, 26-year-old 20-point scorer. You got the 5th pick, who's Keaton Wagler. You got a 29 first, and you got Isaiah Jackson. That is an absolute haul. So I got to give the Clippers a lot of credit in their deadline moves, I should say, and kind of keep up the momentum here and sell high on Kawhi. Anyway, that'll do it for tonight's episode. If you want to talk NBA, you want to talk future draft picks, debates, go ahead and hit me up on the NBA Fast Break podcast. All right, I'm out.